Yo, welcome to Shane's Take. I'm your host, Shane Norman, and today we'll be projecting the top 7 NFC quarterbacks from 7 to 1. And this will be predicated on what I thought they did in the offseason to help the quarterback, because the quarterback position is one of those positions where we look at it individually, but the success of the position is far from how we look at it. It really is predicated from what all these other positions do, like your line, for instance. That's number one. Then your running back position. Do defenses respect the run? Then as well as your defense, man, field positioning, how many times you get the ball, how long do you sit on the bench? These things matter. So I'm not really basing this too much off of last season. Of course, you have to some degree, but I don't think that seasons repeat like that. So with that being said, to start off at number 7, I see Matthew Stafford, who actually is one of those people that kind of contradict what I just said. As far as repeat seasons, I see it being hell all over again for Matthew Stafford. But I think if healthy, he finds some success with Cooper Kupp if he remains healthy. But yeah, I see minimal there. Especially, I'm not even going to mention his numbers from last season because they were just bad. It was a small sample size, but I just didn't see where they made themselves. They're in rebuilding mode. They went all in. They pushed all their chips in for the Super Bowl, and they got that. And they're reaping the benefits or lack thereof now. So I got Matthew Stafford at number 7. At number 6, I've got, and this might surprise some people, but I've got Kirk Cousins there at number 6, just because they lost Adam Thielen, which he dealt with a lot of injuries and hasn't been all too productive. But I think the loss of Dalvin Cook, Eric Kendricks on the defensive side of the ball, I don't know what's going on with Daniel Hunter. Patrick Peterson's gone, so like a lot of their core is gone. I know. I believe Dalvin Tomlinson, he's not in Minnesota anymore. So there goes their interior pass rush on the defensive side of the ball, which was already kind of suspect in the first place, on top of you just letting go of a running back that got you 1,100 yards 4 years in a row. I think that's going to hurt them, as well as losing Adam Thielen. So, I saw they invested in their offensive line, but what happens when teams focus on Justin Jefferson and take away everything and make Kirk Cousins beat you another way? So I think that he takes a step back next year, but he'll probably have a decent season. He does have Justin Jefferson on his team, so he probably has a decent season, as well as having Jordan Addison. And this is the top 7 out of 16 teams in the conference, so not too shabby. But I think that he will be the number 6 ranked quarterback by the end of this season. At number 5, I have Geno Smith. Actually, I don't. I have Justin Fields. I apologize. I think Justin Fields, now that he has a legitimate number 1 receiver, and they got better on defense, they addressed the offensive line, as well as he is a threat on foot, which goes a long way in this league now. So I think that Justin Fields makes a tremendous jump, and he gives the Lions potentially a run for their money in that division. But Justin Fields, he threw for 17 touchdowns and 11 interceptions last year, with pretty much nothing. So I'm excited to see what what he's able to do with DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney. But I think his playmaking ability makes him a candidate for somebody that could really make a real push to be a top quarterback in this conference. So we move on to number 4, in which I have Geno Smith. I pause because Jared Goff should be at the number 4. I love what Detroit has done. I think they've really put everybody on their team in a position to succeed, and they'll probably be a playoff team next year. But Jared Goff, I didn't really see what they did in the wide receiver position. You got one of your young rookie potential stars out for 6 games because of the gambling situation. So I like the addition of Jahmyr Gibbs, though. I think that gives him an aspect that he didn't quite have. He reminds me a lot of like an Alvin Kamara, so he could do a lot for him out the backfield. I think Jared Goff follows up with another fantastic season. But he will definitely be the number 4 rated quarterback in this conference. And I say that might be low for some people, but I'll explain that as I get further. But there's still questions. I still have to see some consistency out of Detroit. I just haven't. I don't think anybody has. So we move on to Geno Smith at the number 3. Because his offensive line, his tackles were great, and they addressed the interior, which is phenomenal. The running game is what it is. I mean, we all saw it last year. I love the addition of Jackson Smith-Njigba. That was great. That spreads teams wide open. I mean, if this rookie is decent, it makes it difficult on teams. He doesn't even have to be great. And I think with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, that just makes it hell to try to figure out a personnel to guard it all. As well as their defense just recognizing where they were weak at and addressing it. Got Bobby Wagner, got Jaron Reed. They were weak on the interior, so they did that. And then you got Jamal Adams coming back. You drafted the cornerback out of Illinois at number 5. So, I expect them to be a really good team. And I think offensively, those 2 young tackles that had really good seasons, in my opinion, those 2 rookies, and they had to go against San Francisco in the playoffs, which we know what's on those edges. Really tough. But I feel like they held their own. Maybe they didn't win the battle, but they're good young tackles, and I'm excited to see what year number 2 does for them. And I think Geno Smith, he could follow up this season with he could follow up last season with another spectacular performance. I would expect around the same, around like probably 32 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Wouldn't shock me from his 30-11 performance. So at number 2, I have Jalen Hurts. And the reason for that is because I think the loss of Miles Sanders is going to weigh. And I think that the between the schedule that they have and the lack of threat of Jalen Hurts actually pulling it and actually handing the ball off on an RPO now with Kenneth Gainwell and Devontae Swift, I don't think teams are really scared of that. And I really wonder what it'll look like when the RPO isn't working. I mean, he threw for 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Great season, 3,700 yards. 101 passer rating in 15 games on a 66.5 completion percentage. Fantastic. But when you lose pieces on defense, key pieces on defense, key pieces on offense, I believe they lost their right tackle as well. I'm expecting to see a little bit of a drop off. Just a little bit. Nothing much, nothing major. I still think he's probably going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, not just the NFC. But I think that he falls number 2 in this category of who will be the projected best quarterbacks in this conference at 2023. Minor step back. The quarterback who I do have at number 1, which is Dak Prescott, is probably going to make a lot of these people cut the video off. But the reason for me picking Dak Prescott to have the best season is because, I mean, yeah, the 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. The 15 interceptions is an anomaly. I mean, you can go back and watch the interceptions. It's here nor there. But I think with the additions that they made on both sides of the ball, I think that I think this is probably the best team Dak Prescott has had on both sides of the ball since he's been a Dallas Cowboy, if I'm being honest. He's a very accurate quarterback. Even with the interceptions, his completion percentage is 66.2. And his wide receiving core, in my opinion, with Brandon Cooks, that definitely makes it a lot better. Doesn't make it the same as Jalen Hurts, though. But I think the running game, or the threat of, is what separates them there. That and, yeah, pretty much the running game, I think, is what separates them. And I think that Jalen Hurts runs a style of offense, and Dak Prescott runs an offense, if that makes any type of sense. I'm just interested to see what Philly does again as far as like how they run their offense. I'm just interested to see that. But as far as Dak Prescott is concerned, we act like the year before he didn't throw for 37 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. I think he gets back to normal, especially with the injury early in the year. So, very interesting conference of quarterbacks. And I guess for your honorable mentions, Derek Carr, I left him out this list because, I mean, I like Chris Olave. Love him, actually. I think he's a baller. But there's just too many uncertainties around him in New Orleans. And I don't think that he's the type of quarterback that can make good players great. So I don't know what's going on with Michael Thomas. I don't know what's going on with Alvin Kamara. So I felt like I'd be misguided in mentioning his name on this list. But another honorable mention was Daniel Jones. Excuse me. Though he threw for 15 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, he did have a 67% completion rating, which is the highest out of the quarterbacks I've mentioned. But they don't have any wide receivers at all. So, like, not that I could name you. I mean, maybe Darius Slayton. I don't know if he re-signed or whatever, but yeah, that's my take on the top 7 projected QBs as far as how their seasons will go next season. Leave your thoughts and comments below. I appreciate you all watching and giving me your time. But before I go, I do want to say this. When we look at quarterbacks, let's look at everything. Look at both sides of the ball. It's important. Look at the trenches. That's important. Look at the running game. That's important. These are things that are very important when it comes down to looking at the quarterback position. But with that being said, man, I'm your host, Shane Norman. Thank you for tuning in to Shane's Take. I'm out. Peace.